But President Trump is challenging Democrats to put their money where their mouth is and accept illegal immigrants in sanctuary cities. But the same Democrats who pushed those policies are slamming the idea.
It's illegal. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's sophomoric. It's petulant. And it's par for the course.
So why do Democrats refuse to stand by their own policies? Here to debate it is former consultant for the Department of Homeland Security, Mustafa Tamiz, and Republican strategist Kimberly Klacik. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate it.
Good morning.
So, Mustafa, I'll start with you. So what's the deal? I mean, sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties and states, they're supposed to be a sanctuary for illegal immigrants, so why don't you want them there?
Well, I think the problems with the Department of Homeland Security, a number of them officials have resigned. Some of them have been fired by President Trump because they don't want to break the law. And the president's even offered that he would pardon them if somehow they were prosecuted. Just think about that. The president of the United States offering pardons if someone got prosecuted for breaking the law, working for the Department of Homeland Security. You cannot take people that have asked for asylum, that go for asylum hearing, and then bus them to a different part of the United States, so when they have the hearing, they would not be able to make that hearing. Just think, the President of the United States asking people to break the law, and when they don't, either they resign or he fires them in the Department of Homeland Security. That's exactly what's happened.
It's interesting that you're making that argument because a lot of these people are breaking the law to begin with, but Democrats don't seem to have a problem with that. Kimberly?
Yes, exactly.
Asylum is a international and United States law. People they're not illegal. They're asking for asylum, which is a legal process.
Kimberly?
So just when we thought we could understand the liberal logic, it's now even harder to understand because they're upset because President Trump's administration proposed the idea of redirecting these caravans to sanctuary cities where they'll be safe and they'll have lots of freebies by taxpayer dollars. And this just further proves the point that no matter what Trump does, it's not going to receive bipartisan support. Nancy Pelosi, of all people, made a comment saying the children of immigrants are being put in this warped game to perpetuate fear and demonize immigrants, when it was her, not too long ago, that was playing checkers with DACA recipients as the government shutdown approached. Please understand, the people that treat children of immigrants the worst are their parents themselves. From those that are being created not out of love, but in the sole purpose of being anchor babies, to those that are being forced to make the trek from cities like Guatemala without adequate food or water. And those are the parents that are doing this to these children. And illegal migration is a crime. Imagine your mom taking you on a bank heist with her. It's a crime.
Well, let me ask Mustafa about that because you did bring up the asylum, those who are seeking asylum here. And part of the problem is some of the definitions are changing and people are trying to seek asylum not solely because they fear for their life. That's why they're supposed to seek asylum, not for economic purposes. But I want to talk about what Lindsey Graham said, that we need to change some of these loopholes that involve children and bringing children here. And people think if they do that, then they can stay. Mustafa?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, asylum seekers are people who are fleeing violence in their country, and the process is that they get a hearing, and they get to plead their case, and either we send them back after that hearing, or they get to stay if they have a valid claim. If you then just take people in and ship them to a different part of the country where they can't come back to their hearing, then they become illegal. So the President Trump is actually trying to create more illegal people in our country than not. And as far as, people bringing their kids in, imagine, you put yourself in the shoes of a mother that is fleeing violence enough to be able to cross the border, try to do this. And the more we shut down legal ports of entry, which is what the President Trump has done, the more illegal immigration we have. The President is looking at this as a political issue, not a humanitarian issue. Putting kids in cages is not American values.
Which the previous administration did
at all.
Built for.
Kimberly,
He keeps saying that, but that's just not true.
That is true.
You have to start looking at facts, not alternative facts that the president pushes out.
Well, but that is true because we did speak with the border chief under the Obama administration, and he said himself that did happen, that these issues were prevalent during the Obama administration as well. Kimberly, you get the last word.
The issues were, but not putting kids in cages.
No,
like nobody
I'm sorry,
remembers
Mr.
kids in
There's
cages in the
images of
Obama
that.
administration.
There are pictures of that happening. Kimberly, you get the final word.
Yes, absolutely. There are pictures in 2014 where that happened. Look, if these officials in sanctuary cities don't want these caravans redirected to their way, then perhaps they don't actually want these individuals in their town. Just like any other Democratic talking point, it's great until it actually happens.
All right, Kimberly, Mustafa, thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. We will see what happens.
Thank you.
All right.
Welcome back. We are just 1 week away from the September 30th government shutdown deadline. House and Senate leaders have reached a bipartisan agreement to fund the government through December 20th. This continuing resolution includes $231 million for the U.S. Secret Service, with conditions that the agency cooperate with congressional investigations after 2 failed assassination attempts against former President Trump. It does not include the SAVE Act, which, of course, President Trump supported. This is a measure that would help secure upcoming elections by preventing non-citizens from voting, which is illegal, by the way. The House is expected to vote on this bill as early as Wednesday. Joining me now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, member of the House Oversight, Armed Services, and Veterans Affairs Committees. Congresswoman, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. What is the fate of this bill to ensure that we don't have a government shutdown and give more funding and resources to Secret Service?
Well, I believe this bill will pass. We do this almost every year. We have a short-term spending measure until December, and then in December there will be an omnibus or a larger continuing resolution to continue funding at record levels and not address the excessive spending by the federal government. This is just business as usual in Washington. I expect it to pass this week, and then we'll go on to December. We'll spend more than ever, and we'll do an omnibus or another CR for next year, I would imagine, at the end of the year.
Well, I mean, this is what you've been complaining about, right? Too many CRs, time after time after time. I mean, are you waiting, and you and your colleagues, are you waiting in hopes that President Trump takes the helm and then you'll decide on spending for 2025 after that? Is that why you're doing such a short-term bill till December 20th?
That's the best case scenario, is that Trump gets reelected to the White House and can direct us and at the spending levels. We have to cut spending. I mean, I just had a candidate forum last night, and I listened to voters. People are sick and tired of the government having a blank check, basically, and not taking care of business. As you mentioned, we throw more money at more problems like the Secret Service, who has not cooperated with Congress at all since the attempted assassination attempt, both of them, by the way. I don't have a lot of faith without some strings attached and making sure that we keep him protected, for example. What are we going to do to stop funding NGOs that are helping illegals cross the southern border? What are we doing to shut down the border? And so when you think about the way that we waste our taxpayer dollars right now, the American people are sick of it. I hope and I pray that Donald Trump is reelected, that we actually cut spending, that we preserve Social Security, et cetera, because in 10 years, that's going to be insolvent. We aren't doing anything right now to solve America's fiscal problems.
Well, I want to get your take on how the Secret Service can best use this money in protecting President Trump and other candidates. I spoke with Eric Prince yesterday. He is the founder of Blackwater, and he had an idea in terms of protecting President Trump. I want to get your take on it. Watch this.
There's a lot of chatter about more help is needed, and that's absolutely for sure. Trying to integrate private security into that would be exceedingly difficult, especially for the private guys. I recommend that JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, has Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, the 2 most elite commando units in the world. They have a lot of capacity. There's precedent. They could put 10 guys on the detail and make it happen.
What do you think, Congresswoman?
Well, I would be all in for everything to keep Donald Trump safe. If having JSOC soldiers would be helpful, I would support it. I also believe better training for these individuals. We can't allow this to continue to happen. I am very fearful for him and his family, his children and grandchildren, because of what they're up against right now. And so I think we need to make sure that he has all the resources he needs to be safe.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Trump announced a new border policy plan during a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina on Saturday night. Watch this.
I'm announcing a new plan to end all sanctuary cities in North Carolina and all across our country. No more sanctuary cities.
The Texas Department of Public Safety also said that state troopers encountered 36 illegal migrants near the southern border on Friday, which included some special interest migrants from Turkey, Pakistan, India, and Vietnam. The group from Turkey told troopers that they paid $12,000 a head to cross into the U.S. illegally in an effort to meet the so-called sponsor that is waiting for them in New Jersey, Congresswoman. It's unbelievable that this is all so planned out, and the drug cartels are accepting $12,000 a head from these folks to come in illegally. Nothing has changed.
Well, just a few years ago, it was only $8,000 across the southern border. So it looks like inflation has hit the criminal cartels. I mean, look, the Biden-Harris administration, the wide open borders, they are funding criminal cartels in Mexico and South America. They are allowing this to happen by pushing back and reversing all of Donald Trump's border policies that kept our country safe. There are hundreds of terrorists on the terrorist watch list that have come across the southern border. We are less safe than ever because of it. And again, another reason why we must re-elect Donald Trump to keep our country safe.
Yeah, it's Liz Peek jumping here. I believe it's 350 people apprehended at the border in the last 3.5 years who were actually on the terrorist watch list, Liz.
So
Yes,
I think Trump is right that we have to cut down on the attractions that bring people across the border, Maria. And Representative Mace, I'm interested, and one of your colleagues introduced a bill last year basically banning sanctuary cities. And this does have to go through Congress, I believe. My question to you is, was that bill ever picked up? What kind of support would there be for a bill that basically gets rid of one of the great enticements for criminals and so forth coming into our country who know they will be protected in New York or San Francisco from ICE, from deportation, which I think is a horror.
It is a horror, and I would support any legislation that would ban sanctuary cities. To my knowledge, it has not gotten picked up. It has not had a vote in the House of Representatives, and I agree we need to eliminate every single incentive that allows these individuals to be emboldened and come across our country illegally, to include defunding the NGOs that are telling them how to get to the southern border, how to cross into it, and how to vote. That has to stop.
Unbelievable. Meanwhile, what about your bill? I mean, your Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act passed in the House last week. Great idea, Congresswoman. The bill aims to protect women and girls by ensuring illegal migrants who are convicted of or admit to sex offenses or domestic violence are deported or deemed inadmissible to the United States. And now it moves to the Senate, but in the House you had 158 Democrats voting against it. Can you explain to us why 158 Democrats voted against a bill to protect women and girls from sexual abuse?
Right, their motto is protect all women except for American women and girls. I can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. 158 Democrats, 158 allies of Kamala Harris voted against deporting illegal aliens who rape our women, who are pedophiles, and who have murdered our women and girls. And it's wrong. And I was at a candidate forum last night. And when I brought up my Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act that overwhelmingly passed the House last week, there were people laughing. When the far left, when the radical left shows you who they are, we need to believe them. They are out for Looney Tunes. They don't care about American women and girls. This was important legislation. These people have got to go. We're talking about the worst of the worst, and they're laughing about it. This is not funny. It's not funny.
No, it isn't. Congressman, thank you. We'll be following your work. We appreciate your time this morning. Nancy Mace,
Thank you, Maria.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer defending Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz's ability to answer tough questions, completely ignoring the fact that they have done 3 times fewer interviews than Team Trump.
We've heard other Democrats in your position suggesting that they want to see more from Vice President Harris and Governor Walz.
I have incredible confidence in both the Vice President and Governor Walz. They have shown that they are happy warriors. They are able to answer tough questions, and they are eager to get back into the debate.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha joins me now. Joe, whether they're happy warriors, sad warriors, somewhere in between warriors, that doesn't answer the question of why they don't answer questions. Joe?
And we know the answer why, Todd, that if you take Kamala Harris out of a teleprompter and you take away, say, ABC News moderators there to hold her hand throughout debates, then it's not going to go well, like we saw last week in the Oprah Winfrey interview. And this is truly the strategy. It's to portray Kamala Harris, who has seen staff turnover as vice president at 93% of people leaving because she is so difficult to work for, and then saying, yeah, actually, she's a happy warrior. Meanwhile, happy is not the way you would describe the country right now. 75% of voters say we're going in the wrong direction under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because Americans are still experiencing cost of living that's too high, Todd. They're drowning in credit card debt. They're chasing the minimum payments. Their wages aren't keeping up with inflation. They're moving out of neighborhoods because they see crime that's too far out of control. They see a border that's allowing millions upon millions of illegal immigrants into this country that affects their social services because budgets are being exhausted. And by the way, that includes hundreds on the terror watch list. So that is a national security nightmare, and nightmare overseas as well. A world on fire as wars in the Middle East and Ukraine continue. And then they see a candidate like Kamala Harris, who has yet to hold one press conference since becoming the Democratic nominee. In fact, Kamala Harris has done less than 10 interviews, while Donald Trump, J.D. Vance have done nearly 80 during the same stretch, while these tickets have gone against each other starting in late July. The calculation here, of course, is to shorten the runway. They're going to run out the clock, and to expose Kamala Harris, her handlers are only going to say, unless it is controlled in a friendly environment, they're not going to allow her to do anything as far as actual answer questions that are somewhat uncomfortable. And this is, by the way, the most patently ridiculous campaign we have witnessed in our lifetimes. And the sad thing is that here we are 4 days before the election, and we are basically in a dead heat at this point. So I guess they think it's working, Todd.
I mean, well, look at the Al Smith dinner controversy. She said she's not going to do it this year. She's considering doing it next year. The reason I originally thought is she doesn't want to sort of touch the Catholic abortion issue. But there's something deeper, and I think you nailed it with your answer just now. She doesn't want to have to engage in kind of jokey banter because that is not her forte. She could be exposed by missing a joke or making a joke that fails. She doesn't want any of that. She needs to control it. And we see even times when she tries to control it, Joe, with Oprah and the ABC interviews, they don't go that well either. Before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this. LA Times writing, quote, Kamala Harris tried being something she wasn't. Now that liberal makeover is dodging her candidacy. But is that accurate, Joe, seeing as she was the most far-left senator based on her voting record, not just what she said in the Democrat primary in 2020?
I think, Todd, what we've learned is Kamala Harris never says what she means and never means what she says. The bottom line is that she wanted to decriminalize border crossings. She was against the border wall. Now she's for it. She wanted to abolish private health insurance. Now she says she doesn't. She was for EV mandates, but now she needs Michigan. So now, no, maybe she's not for EV mandates. She wanted to ban fracking. Now she's for fracking. She was opposing more police. Now she's for more police. This is the weather vane candidate who will just say anything to get elected. And we even saw it in our Fox News poll last week, and I'll leave it here. 55% of voters believe that Kamala Harris will say anything to get elected. And that, I think, ultimately, that inauthentic, non-principled campaign may be her undoing, Todd.
Yeah, what's funny to me, it's shocking to me, is that some people don't care and they're voting for her anyway. We'll see how it all plays out. Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Concha, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
President Biden is heading here to New York City today for the United Nations General Assembly, also known as UNGA around here, after appearing to have another gaffe on the world stage.
Peter Doocy is live at the White House for us. Hey, Peter.
Good morning. And White House officials insisted ahead of time that there be very, very little press coverage of President Biden's meetings over the weekend in Wilmington, Delaware, with the leaders of Japan and India and Australia. And the little bit that the press pool was allowed to attend got kind of awkward.
So I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
And you can see in that clip, Prime Minister Modi was sitting right behind President Biden the whole time. It's unclear why that part of the program was so confusing, although it is worth pointing out many of the advanced staffers who have helped President Biden at events like this over the years have moved on to the Harris campaign to help the vice president. And there is just one president at a time. That's why it's notable that both Biden and VP Harris are conducting their own diplomacy this week. They're going to hold separate meetings with the United Arab Emirates president, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. We saw that when Netanyahu came to the White House a few months ago. They had two different meetings. The vice president chose to take a harder line with him, Netanyahu, than President Biden did. And the vice president is going to skip the events at the UN General Assembly. President Biden will get one more chance in New York City on the east side to be the solo headliner of that event. But the big thing that he has been talking about for months that he wants to have sewn up by the end of his administration, which is a ceasefire in Israel with Gaza and with Hamas and with Hezbollah, appears to be less likely by the day, as evidenced in that report right before us.
Hey, Peter, why didn't, it was the Prime Minister of India, Japan, and Australia. They had to go to Wilmington, Delaware, to a hotel there. Normally these events are held at the White House. It's an annual meeting. Why did they have to go to the president? Why didn't they do this in at the White House?
No idea. There were many questions about that at briefings over the last couple days, and reporters have just been told, oh, well, President Biden wants to show these guys where he grew up, and all politics is personal. And some of the big events with these guys who flew from the complete other side of the world were at President Biden's high school, where he is not, it's not a regular place that high-level diplomacy happens, and it's not a place that they've gone while he's been president, but it's something that they wanted to squeeze in with the last 4 months for some reason. Probably, it would seem just convenience for President Biden.
Probably. So, Peter, you have followed and been with Joe Biden for almost 6 years now. And for him to bark out that, who's next?
He was angry.
You've seen him up close better than anybody at this channel. Some have suggested it's cognitive decline. Others would probably try to defend the president and just say, well, he didn't know what was going on. Was it a stage management thing or something bigger?
It's, based on how I know these events go, it probably said on a piece of paper right in front of him who was next. And he just was not consulting it.
Peter, it's so interesting.
But the thing is, if he shouted out, who's next? There is no one with the authority in the chain of command to yell out something back to the president in that situation. So I'm sure somebody was just telling him, look down.
Are you hearing that other world leaders are told in advance, just protect him? Because we've seen this in the past. Was it the G7 when a leader had to come over and pull him back over? We saw
Europe, NATO.
Exactly. Are they being told, try to protect him and make him look as good as possible?
I haven't heard that specifically, but it does seem like these leaders are coming to the U.S. with the understanding that this is kind of the Biden farewell tour, and they have to figure out what it means for their country if Vice President Harris wins or if former President Trump wins in a couple months.
All right. Who's next? Peter, you're done. Just saying. Who's next?
I'm sorry, just to wrap this up. Thanks, Peter. We just showed you live images of what's happening internationally, and to have a commander-in-chief that the Indian prime minister is having to save him, he's yet barking out who's next. And as Peter says, this protocol is right in front of me. He didn't know. I mean, that is just troubling. This is a person that is over our military infrastructure and what we're supposed to do next, and that our allies are asking us, will you have our back? What is the next move? We got intel assets all over the world now that he's responsible for their safety, and he doesn't know who's next to speak.
Well,
it's troubling.
We need a president that commands attention and power, and we're not getting that here. He still has 4 more months left.
Yeah. Well, and to Peter's point, Joe Biden right now is really mad at Israel because he has wanted Israel to wrap up what's going on with Hamas, for 6 months, and it just keeps going. And in fact, we have heard through reporting that Jill Biden has said very adamantly, wrap things up, but it just lingers and it's getting bigger. And we have 2 nuggets. One, it sounds like Kamala Harris is not going to go to the Al Smith dinner over at the Waldorf Astoria. Presidential candidates have been going to it for a very long time. Walter Mondale ducked the event in 1994. And the other thing is regarding Jill Biden saying we got to wrap this up. Maybe she's saying that because she's running the country.
Yeah, she was at the cabinet meeting on Friday. She was at the head of the table. Here's a picture of her. And I was watching Fox and Friends Weekend, and I turn on the TV and I see her at the end of the table. I'm like, where is he? Why isn't he at this meeting?
Yeah, there she is.
Miranda Devine writes, who exactly is running the country certainly appears to be Jill Biden and not Joe Biden. And it goes to the overall question, who's running things and why is it not been asked about the concealment of Joe Biden? Everybody saw what happened on the debate stage, but that was almost a revelation to people that haven't been plugged into mainstream media, because they hadn't been reporting on the story, if you hadn't been watching Fox. And there's been no question to Kamala Harris on any of the interviews that she's done thus far, not with Oprah, not with ABC. It was definitely not focused on the debate stage. None of the cabinet members, when they go on the Sunday shows, are asked about what is going on in the White House. There was a previous reporting done that the cabinet meetings were scripted and that questions had to be pre-submitted. And now Jill Biden from the secretaries, so they could have this all coordinated.
Well, essentially it looks like, because Joe Biden is in the middle of the table on that far side.
Yeah, I didn't see that over the weekend. I didn't know he was there.
And, yeah, he was there. And then you've got down at the end his wife, the First Lady, doing all the talking. It looks essentially like she is the voice of translator. Okay, Joe's nodding. Let me tell you what the president thinks, which really is what she says. And that's the thesis of Miranda Devine's op-ed today in the New York Post. Check it out, nypost.com. She goes on to say whether it's Jill or somebody else running the country, the bottom line is that we don't have a functional president. This is a constitutional crisis. Kamala Harris is most to blame because she has the constitutional duty as vice president to ensure the president's brain is not AWOL. She also knows more about Biden's cognitive health than anyone, apart from Jill and Hunter Biden. She has lunch with him regularly and often has boasted of being the last person in the room when decisions are made. But she has not. She has been lying through her teeth to the American people about our president.
It just makes me wonder, Ainsley, all the reporting that came after the debate of all the mainstream media, they started reporting on it suddenly after what we saw in the debate, and they were telling us what was happening in the room. All of that reporting has stopped. Joe Biden is still there. The moment they took him off the ticket, they stopped the reporting about what was happening. And it makes you wonder, was that the goal? It wasn't about transparency. It wasn't finally letting the American public know what was happening in the White House. Was it just to get Joe Biden off the ticket? So now that you guys have Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, you guys don't want to cover this anymore?
Well, I think that since he's not running anymore and he's not the candidate, I don't know if they really care when he says, who's next at the podium, because they used to worry how this is going to look, how the optics of this were going to play out for the election. Now they don't have to worry about that. And Miranda Devine says in her article, points out that we do have 4 more years with him being our president. She says the fate of the free world... 4 months, sorry, yes. The fate of the free world should not be left in the hands of a man who can't remember where he is or what he's meant to be doing at any given moment.
Well, think about it. If Miranda Devine got her wish, Joe Biden would be replaced immediately. Unfortunately for the Republicans, it would be by Kamala Harris. Then the vice president would become president and then essentially would be an incumbent running for re-election. And that would, as we have heard from the experts, give her an advantage. So
Maybe not, though. She'd have to speak more.
But the issue...
Well, she would, but, just electorally, it would help her.
The issue should not, and I get your point of view. A lot of Republicans share that point of view. But the issue, frankly, should not be political. I mean, it's just a basic functioning government, and I don't understand how we've been lectured about, threats to democracy, and the person that is supposed to protect our republic, who's supposed to be at the top of it, cannot do it, and everyone knows it, and we're supposed to pretend like the country can just be on autopilot for 4 months when everything is happening when it comes to the economy and then international relations. Okay, maybe the staff can help us get along for certain things. But when it comes to where we stand on the world stage, You can't depend on the staff to do that.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Let's bring in Robert Charles, former Assistant Secretary of State for George W. Bush and a former Naval Intel officer. Bobby Charles, your assessment of the breaking news, these strikes that are happening as we speak.
Yep. I think Americans should stay focused, Todd, on both the tactical and the strategic aspects of this. Tactically, this is a move upwards. This is an escalation of that conflict, which is regional and could become global. Strategically, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Hezbollah is the largest surrogate of Iran in the region, and Hezbollah is sort of Hamas on steroids. So really, this is a conflict with Iran. Another thing to keep in mind is that Hezbollah has operatives in this country. There have been more than 100 arrests in recent years of people either financially or operationally trying to help Hezbollah in this country. So something, again, to keep in mind. But the big strategic piece here is that if a ceasefire does not happen soon, ultimately it is a big fail for the Biden-Harris administration. And why is that? Because, first of all, Russia and China then get an opening to do all kinds of things in chaos, with chaos occurring in the Middle East. In addition, you get ultimately it's a diplomatic fail on the part of the administration, which means in the end that it helps Trump, and ironically, sort of the second or third order effect in here is that Iran does not want to see Trump reelected because it would dramatically affect their future. So Iran will probably pull back, but escalation is a real possibility here. And, this is higher and more intense conflict than we have seen in a long time, probably since 2006 in this region. And I would encourage people to remember that Israel has the ability to defend itself with nuclear weapons, which should in some ways put Iran back on their heels.
Now, Robert, I want you to listen to right now, again, all deference, this was 24 hours ago when John Kirby was on Fox News Sunday. But nevertheless, the information and the attitude coming out of this administration remains the same. Here's John Kirby. Take a listen.
We still believe that there is time and space for diplomacy to work here. We understand that it's not moving in the best direction, but that doesn't mean we think that engaging in another full front, another all-out war in the north is the best thing for Israel.
Robert, specifically, he was referring to a report that Israel managed to stop a second October 7th, which for them is their equivalent of 9/11, with some very, very targeted strikes to some very senior Hezbollah leaders. To be clear, Israel prevented their next 9/11, and yet John Kirby is questioning them? That makes no sense to me. What say you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Todd. We should not be ambivalent here. We should not be confused here. We should be very direct in our support for Israel, because I've read those reports too, and it looks like there was an intent of Hezbollah to come in again, and this time in even larger numbers. So at the end of the day, what this really means is that if we need to support Israel unequivocally. This is the choice between deterrence and appeasement. And in the end, unfortunately, the Biden-Harris crowd has been very much about appeasement. I don't think there's any room for that anymore. I think at this stage of the game, everything has to be about deterrence, which means, Todd, that we need to tell people, we need to tell the world, and our allies need to tell the world that we stand with Israel in their own defense. For the first time ever, Hezbollah, surrogate for Iran, has actually been hitting pieces of the Iron Dome and the Iron Dome production facilities. So they're truly trying to take this up a notch. But if they take it up too many notches, I think they're going to be sorry they did.
With that as the backdrop, the Iranian president arrives here in New York City ahead of his address to the UN General Assembly tomorrow. Need a quick answer on this, Robert. When the General Assembly is over, will the Iranian president return to Iran scared or emboldened?
I would like to believe that the message he receives once being here is that he needs to back off, back down, and back away. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that what we're going to hear is, again, probably more ambivalence and a kind of mealy-mouthed response to what he has to say. He, of course, will be very anti-American and very anti-Israeli.
On our soil, and yet we placate it. Makes no sense. Robert Charles, thanks for your insight on a breaking news morning. We appreciate it.
Kamala Bott needs a tune-up. The VP finally getting herself out there with more interviews and chit-chat with journalists, but her style so far has been robotic. Whenever asked to give policy specifics, Harris reverts to her pre-programmed, over-rehearsed talking points. Check out this rinse, blather, repeat.
I was raised as a middle-class kid. I grew up a middle-class kid.
I intend to create an opportunity economy. Creating an opportunity economy. Building an opportunity economy. What I call an opportunity economy. I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a career prosecutor for most of my career. Having a background as a prosecutor.
The programmer's still trying to work out the bugs in Kamala Bot. She's only got 2 settings, word salad and pander politics. VP Harris testing out her latest accent while speaking to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus in Washington. Listen.
I love you back. I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community. Recently, I was in Nevada. I'm in these streets, let me tell you, I'm everywhere. We have some work to do. In fact, a lot of hard work ahead of us. But we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is joyful work, I say.
Oh, God, it's so embarrassing. All right, Dana, you could ask her, what are we going to do about the situation in Gaza? And she'd say, well, I was raised in a middle-class family.
Actually, her line on that one is, I won't give Israel what they need to defend themselves, but Israel has a right to defend itself. That's actually, she knows that line and she used it yesterday. She's doing what I call prevent defense.
There we go,
right? Yeah. So they want to make no news for the next 47 days, right? They're in Survivor 47 days. So her goal is to not give President Trump anything to be able to use against her. Now, you can make fun, everybody can make fun of her and say she only has these 5 lines. She recycles them all the time. She comes up with the accent in order to fit in with the group. But here's what she needs. She has to keep her base. And they have already factored in the Teamsters situation. They would have loved to have had the endorsement. They did not get the endorsement. That is a big blow. Well, it's great for Trump. What I was told by some Democrats today is that we've already factored it in. We already knew that we weren't going to have those people because they already knew what the polls looked there. But you cannot win a news cycle if you are playing it so safe. Now, Trump is going to play the news cycle. He's going to play it. Sometimes he's going to win it. Sometimes he's going to lose it. But there's also a school of thought. I'm not exactly sure where I sit on it, but it is that whoever this race is about is the one who's going to lose. So what Kamala Harris wants is for everyone to be talking about Trump all the time because it worked in 2020. That was the basement campaign. So now she's hiding in plain sight by doing some of these safe events, but not rocking the boat so much that you would actually get a lot of news made, because the news she would make would be something like the interview she did when she was at the White House, and then after that she would be asked to go to her room for 6 months.
The risk is to that strategy is that these clips are now the news. Everyone's seeing her say the same thing over and over again, and that makes her look bad, Greg.
Well, I disagree with calling her robotic. It's more liquidy, like she's like a liquidy robot, a slinky. If a slinky could talk, that's her. And maybe because I've watched too much Selling Sunset, but it's very wine chatty. Like she needs a little chihuahua and espresso martini. She seems super relaxed. I love how she uses this phrase, opportunity economy. All she did was reverse economic opportunity. And then she doesn't explain what it is. Opportunity economy doesn't mean anything. Economic opportunity does. I think if you wanted to blow a fuse, okay, because she keeps talking about, I come from a middle-class family. Some reporters should ask, where do you come from growing up? She might actually answer with a specific statistic about what to do about inflation. Because she'll have like, I come from a wait a second, I can't answer with the right answer. I can beat inflation by blah, blah, blah. It could just like little steam will come out of her head. But it's a testament to how Joe Biden was, that the Dems are grateful for that.
Judge Jeanine, we've seen so many times her not really saying much. Did you hear when she said, the children of the community are the children of the community?
Yeah,
what do you think she means by that?
She did. Were you the one who just said
Give me
how
two
smart
times.
she was? Look, you know what? When she talks about, she says, I grew up middle class. You know what? Donald Trump may have grown up more upper class, but he understands the middle class, and he understands Americans and what they need better than she does. He understands it. He proved it when he was president, and he continues to talk about the issues. And Dana's right. All that they're trying to do is, she doesn't want to make news, All she wants to do is do these interviews where she doesn't really answer any questions so that we can't complain and say she's not doing any interviews. And Brian Fallon, who's one of the senior spokespersons, says, you know what, if you want to know what we do or what she would do, look at all the things she was doing before the ticket switch. Even her spokespeople can't tell you what she's going to do, except to refer to what she was doing before the ticket switch, and all she was doing was laughing and giggling. And so, in the end, they can't tell you anything. They're gaslighting us, and they're trying to make us feel like we're crazy. But I think the most important question when you're a kid, you learn who, what, where, when, and how, right? And why. All right? She doesn't know how. And I don't think she knows why. If you ask Kamala Harris, why are you running for president? I'm sure she'd be stuck. But the best answer she could probably give is to beat Donald Trump, as opposed to saying something about bettering this country, about maybe Donald Trump would say, making America great again. You know, she's robotic. She's liquid. She's not really smart.
She's a slinky. And to Dana's point, you know, she says she's playing prevent defense. What happens when you play prevent defense? You prevent yourself from winning, Harold.
So first of all, I like the B.B. King music. I wish I was going to be here to make
Thank
some
you.
guys here as well.
That's like saying you come from a middle class family.
The thing like B.B. King. I'm from
He's
Memphis.
running out the clock.
He's like, let me run out this clock.
So you say prevent defense. When President Trump, after the first debate, which he was defeated in by the dumb vice president, after that debate, he said that he won. And he said, let's assume he's right. I don't think he is. He said, if you're the champion, you don't give a second debate to the loser. So he was playing his own version of prevent defense and saying, I'm going to use this strategy. I'm not convinced that strategy works for either. The vice president says that she wants an opportunity economy. It would be great if she'd give us some elements. What does an opportunity economy look like? Is it more affordable? Is it more affordability for everyday Americans to buy a home, to raise their kids, to buy groceries, to buy gas, to pay for education? Is it stimulus or tax cuts for small businesses? Maybe their first $1 million of a small business, you cut taxes in half for them. Give us some meat on the bone. I would argue President Trump has not given us this either. He has said, look back to what I did 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Most people don't know what they did 5 hours ago, 5 days ago, 5 months ago, let alone 5 years ago. Both of them would do better, which is the only thing I was trying to say in the first segment. They should both sit down, and we deserve to see them stand side by side and have very tough questions. I would agree with you, Judge. I wish different questions had been asked the last debate. I think Martha and Brett would do a far better job at asking these questions. So you can't play prevent defense. No one wants to see that happen. The thing I learned from the things you said a minute or two ago, Judge, I don't agree with anything but that last thing. Who, what, when.
Who, what, where, when, how, and why.
I like that. I'm going to use that.
You are?
I'm going to give you
Not
credit
today.
when I do it.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.